into this week. It's January 27th, and let's just do a real estate market update. Well, I think the biggest one to even touch on is just the Wall Street first, is just the complete tanking of the Nasdaq due to Nvidia and the AI chips that happened with DeepSeek. So, more to be determined on that one, but it seems like China found a way through AI that was substantially cheaper and more effective than what's been going on with Nvidia and some of those chips. So to be determined on that one. But if you're watching the market today, you're seeing a huge sell-off in the Nasdaq. Usually, it's all really driven from the fact that terrible news for a lot of like the AI chips and those producers, because the terminology that I saw was roughly that there was all this need for chips, high-powered chips, and then China came in and did it for a substantially less, 10% the cost of what Nvidia's investment is. So you're seeing a huge sell-off in the market there. But let's get into real estate, right? So real estate, just some updates: 7.16% on 30-year fixed. You're looking at like 633,000 homes for unsold homes for inventory, which is up about 25% from this time last year. It is January, so give yourself some grace on that one, but you're still seeing increases in sitting inventory for buyers, and the real challenge that we're all seeing is just the 7% interest rate, that people can't afford it. It's pricing a lot of people out. So you got people say, yeah, it'd be nice to move, but not at that rate. But it could create some huge opportunities on the fact that, like, you got less buyer pools for negotiations on that one. But if you need to move, you're still gonna have to move. So there's always that. So don't get that freaked out about it. Some other just guidance points I'd be telling you throughout this entire year that I'm watching is going to be the correlation between inflation and unemployment. The two things that Fed Powell, directly or indirectly, if you're watching what he's saying, is he cares about those two things. That he's looking at and say there's a fierce push to 2% inflation year over year. We're at 2.9, and a watch of the unemployment came in at 4.1%. So, if you see that get up to like 4.7% and inflation coming down, that's a good indicator. You see some rate cuts. You're not going to see a rate cut, I believe, until probably about June. Don't take my word, just my words. What I think about. I'm thinking that you're going to see maybe one cut. You'll see one cut, maybe two, depending on the correlation between inflation and unemployment. The only two things I'm looking at from the Fed side. So it's some other things we kind of looking at. So no real updates outside of just Wall Street having a huge sell-off in the red today, and real estate. What do you need to know? I think things to be looking at is Trump's policy is that he has stated through his executive orders that he wants affordability in America first, and the affordability he sees through the ability to less regulation. He believes that regulation has caused a surplus of roughly about $50,000 in increased cost to home buyers in America, and that being able to fight some of those regulations will help affordability and bring us back all into the American dream. So that's what he's going to be attacking. And I think the first step, the executive order statement on regulation, we'll get into that in a little bit, but I think it's more important to talk about his nominees, because it's really important to see what HUD and FHFA is going to do. So Trump's nominee hasn't been fully confirmed yet, is Scott Turner out of Texas. He actually served during Trump's first administration on the White House Opportunity I'm drawing a blank on this. It's a WHORC or something like that. It has to do with restoration opportunity zones. And Ben Carson was in charge of HUD during that time, so Scott was mentored under Ben Carson, and then also as part of this committee from the White House about opportunity and restoration. What you need to know there is he was able to raise $50 billion in private capital and deployed in opportunity zone funds. Those who don't know what opportunity zone fund or opportunity zones are, they're tracts. We more or less know them as neighborhoods, and these were tracts that were deemed at the state level by governors of areas that needed revitalization, but it was done through private money. That private money would get benefits usually at 5, 7, and 10-year terms of holding those properties there, and it had to do with capital gains, deferment, or complete absolution. So, Scott understands, from being mentored by Ben Carson, he got the approval from Ben Carson about him and the right person to be there. He had $50 billion in deployed capital from the first Trump administration, so he knows what he's doing there. He's got leadership behind him. He was formerly an NFL football player and then got into politics in a leadership form. There hasn't been any real negative from either side, red or blue, about Scott's nomination, so I think that's a good sign. I think he also has business sense around that. His first statement, he did get questioned around where he wants to go with things by Elizabeth Warren. Kind of gave some blanket statements, but overall, his first act was really to maximize the current HUD budget, which, in my interpretation of what that looks like, has a lot to do with um, efficiencies, whether that's process and systems, whether that's inflation of budgets, and figuring out how to cut some of and trim some of the budgetary spending to make it more efficient. He looks like he's going to start first looking internal about where he can maximize some of the benefits of HUD, and then figure out process systems and just cost savings to get the best effect there. And the second one that his nomination that impacts FHFA is Bill Pulte. Bill obviously comes from Pulte Homes. It's actually more of an investment firm now that is from his grandfather, William Pulte. Bill from new construction and building, also someone that's very knowledgeable in the real estate industry and is going to be put inside of the oversight of Fannie, Freddie, and federal home loan programs. These are still government-sponsored enterprises, so from 2007, from those bailouts and the government securing those loans. So they're still in a conservatorship. The one thing, he hasn't really made a whole lot of statements. There's not a whole lot of negative from the red side or the blue side around Bill. Business-oriented, has a network, has relationships, understands the industry. And the one thing that just kind of look at, they've been talking about is like whether or not Fannie, Freddie, and Fannie and Freddie still needs to be in their conservatorship. So what does that mean? It just means that they've got tight regulations on lending right now. If they were to get out of the conservatorship under the GSEs, they would have more ability to have creative loans. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Not really sure on that one, but you're trying to get to more of a free marketplace, and that kind of aligns with the agenda from the Trump administration of deregulation. And I think there's going to be some competitiveness there. You got two pro-business guys going in those positions that understand it. So just from the outside looking in, is just looks good. People that know the industry, have been there, have worked it before. They're not brand new. They're not coming from another industry. Real estate itself has always been kind of a little bit isolated. It's already fragmented, one of the largest industries of fragmentation. But the positive side is you got people that have been appointed or nominated for positions that have been confirmed, that know what they're doing, have experience, and I believe that these people have the ability to actually impact their industry for the positive. I think the next piece to really just look at is interest rates going to get cut? Probably not. I don't see one until maybe June. So we're stuck at this 7%. And, let's just be very clear that our challenge right now is really from at least where the directive of deregulation has a lot to do with inventory. And that inventory, let's start with that. How do you create more inventory? Well, it's not really anything outside of the fact that the federal government can do things like SALT and capital gains, or you hear 1031 exchanges and things like that to incentivize selling of homes and going to different assets. That's great. Then they also do, grants, and whether it's at the state level, local level, the federal level for first-time home buyers, as well as deferments around that and different things to incentivize the buy side. But at the end of the day, the inventory is on the supply side issues, which has to do with permitting, zoning. And the big issue that we need advocacy for inside of our industry that's going to help out just overall affordability and units transacted is going to be whether or not our local and state level advocacy for helping the permitting process so that they can actually get through permitting and zoning so that they can actually break ground. And until we get to that, if you ask any national builder or any mid-sized builder about why, right now you can see the stats that new home construction finishes are outpacing new construction starts, which tells you that the builders are looking and say it's not profitable, they're not UNICEF, they're not going to continue building. So what's the issue? Well, if you talk to any of them, they're going to tell you that the permitting and zoning process to even break ground is so long that they're getting tied up in just bureaucratic stuff at the state and local levels to get it just approved, right? So that's the issue. If we can advocate and lobby for things that are actually going to bring inventory that are I'd say a little bit change. No one really likes change. No one wants it in my backyard. But if you can figure out how to go to local boards and local municipalities and the communities and everything around that to show them the benefits of what economic development can happen through mixed use commercial and residential to drive a thriving economy. Eventually taxes go up, they're able to hire more people come in. If you can hire more people, you can actually have a faster process on permitting and zoning and actually see what the highest and best use of that real estate is. So I really think the one thing that we all need to know is the advocacy at the local level, because the federal government can't like force how they zone and best say that a piece of property can be developed and utilized. It's going to be the state and local levels. I believe that's where it needs to be stayed at, just because of real estate being hyper local, community driven. And if we can figure out ways that will allow the historic piece of real estate and how people remember it and the memories there in the community and that type of thing that are developed, that you can also say, how do we honor that with future development so that you can have robust economies and people that really love their communities with amenities and experiences that they want to have for their families in the phase of life they're in. So that's really thinking about like, what do we do on the inventory side? So that leads into Trump's big questions around the deregulation around real estate is affordability and tariffs. So your affordability has to do with the inventory, so that has to be at the local, state and local municipality level. And then the other part is that on the affordability is if you hit these tariffs. Now, is it the right path? That's to be known. We don't really know yet. The two things that tariffs are going to hit are materials and then labor. So well, you also have immigration policies and the labor side. So, tariffs, it'll hurt materials coming from China and Canada, because those are going to be the biggest importers to our country to build homes. So obviously, if it costs more for a tree to be imported for lumber, it's going to be passed on to the person buying. The same thing with your fixtures, like electrical stuff coming from China. Anything that's coming in from China that's manufactured there is going to have a higher import on it, tax on it. Hence, your things in your home are just going to cost more because of materials. Now, if you go into immigration, this is not an immigration like update or educational long form video. This is really about like what's going to happen there. If you take the labor force out that are willing to do it at a certain rate, you're going to decrease the labor force, which means there's going to be a higher demand for labor. And when the labor has a lower supply and demand for that labor outpaces the actual inventory for it, being the humans willing to do the work, you're going to get higher rates that they can actually charge for, because hey, if there's only 5 people that can frame out a house now when there used to be 15, due to free market economics, those 5 people that can frame out a house are now able to charge more because there's less labor inventory to do the job. So you're going to have challenges with just overall affordability on the products based on tariffs as well as immigration policy. So that we'll see where that goes. This is just in the first week of his new administration and where he's given his executive order. So I think it's important to understand the direction of it. You don't have to agree with it. You can support it, whatever. I don't really care. It's not what this is about. It's more, what's the information about what's going on in the market today? What are the things I need to be looking at for the current year? And I think the big question around all this is really around our economy. Let's be for real, the real estate market has been in a recession. Right? If you want to go back to stats, so you're not crazy. You turn in here and say the market's in the tank, blah, blah, blah. You're not wrong. Like, we just closed out 2024 with 4.1 million transactions. If you want to see like deja vu or history repeats itself just with different people, 2007 was 4.1 million as well. And I pulled these stats from NAR going back to 2001. What I think is interesting for everybody that's selling real estate, if you're an actual realtor or real estate agent and you're selling and representing clients, is that when we closed out 2024 with roughly 4.1 million. This is the takeaway, right? So I just give you a bunch of data. We'll see where it plays out, things you can watch, things like that. But here's the real thing to be aspirational about or to look forward to is if you're an advisor in real estate and you care about your clients and you want to know what to look forward to and why you should continue to lead generate, prospect, advise, provide amazing service, and consult your clients and what they need for their real estate future, here's why. 2007 was 4.1 million transactions. There was roughly, at the height, 1.3, I think it was, million agents. We just finished 2024 with 4.1 units across the U.S. in resale. We just finished with 1.5 million. In 2008, from 2007 to 2008, there was over 140,000 agents got out of the business. In the 5 years from 2007 to 2012, there was 338,000 realtors got out of the business in the 5 years following the lowest unit count that we've had ever. We just replicated 4.1 million in 2024. So what does that tell you? There's probably going to be a delayed effect of agents getting out of the business. 2007, 2012, based on NAR's numbers and what I pulled, 338,000 agents got out of the business 5 years after the lowest point of unit count being closed. We just hit the lowest amount of units closed in over 20 years. And I guarantee you that most of the time, agent count lags the real market that you're facing today. So if you're a real professional, really care about your clients, providing amazing value, articulate your value proposition, out negotiate everybody, do the 180 tasks it takes to close out a transaction, the thing you need to be focused on is recognizing that the current economic market is going to weed out the people that are not professionals, which means there's going to be less competition for you taking on listings and buyers. So you're going to actually understand that, okay, just get through this. Take the market share now, stabilize your business, keep doing that. And in the future, you'll be able to double that market share as it grows because there'll be more buyers coming in, because I think 2026, 27, you'll start to see the easing of the interest rates because we just have to control unemployment and inflation right now. And if you're a homeowner, I think right now there's a lot of equity. I think there is some challenges in trying to find investment properties right now based on the interest rates for refinance. So the real question is finding out how can you build from the ground up is a great opportunity. How can you get creative seller financing? Because there's a lot of people with a lot of equity on it, and how can you do those? There are deals out there if you're an investor or a consumer. And if you need to buy, the other benefit is like you've got more negotiation skills right now because there's less buyers out there. Right? The inventory is up 25% from last year. So you have, instead of looking at what the negatives are and everything you're being told by the news is negative biases in human psychology, cause you to focus towards it. And I'd encourage you to say, okay, that might be negative, that might be real. That's not as great as 2022 or 2021, yet there's an opportunity right now. You just have to look for it right now. Education is going to be key. Sitting there, having available cash, understanding your options on financing, understand the area that you want to be in, how are you prospecting for that, how are you looking at that, whether you're a buyer or an agent representing somebody. There's going to be opportunities there, just you need to have your war chest, if you will, loaded for when that opportunity comes. Because think about today, take real estate out of it, but if you're ready with all your capital and how you're going to do it and your contract, everything that you need to be able to take care of an opportunity, you can tie it to what happened today with the capital markets. Did anybody think NVIDIA would sell off by almost 20%? No. But if you had cash on the sideline and you were like, hey, what goes up must come down and vice versa, if you were ready for the opportunity, even though it says, oh, it keeps growing, it's AI, it's this, all of a sudden, Black Swan happens, and if you have the capital and you have the mindset to realize long-term investing, you can do it. If you have the professionalism of understanding as a real estate agent as well for your clients, you're going to win based on your professionalism. And that's what you really got to think through is stop timing the market, understand what do you need to prep for when an opportunity shows up, you can capitalize on that, and in the long term, it's going to pay off. So that's this week, the week of January 27th on market real estate updates and business. Give me a like, give me a follow, more to come in the future, and talk to you next week.